In the early 90s, when Nintendo and Sega reigned supreme, it was tough to imagine that another company could come along and not only have an impact on the gaming industry, but eventually lead it.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
So goes the story of Sony, whose PlayStation console took the world by storm in 1994, and whose subsequent installments, the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4, either won their respective generations or at least put up a good fight. But not every decision has been a winner for Sony. Despite a decades-long history of producing great games and exceptional systems, there have been a few stumbles along the way.
This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
Let's take an in-depth look at some of Sony's rare missteps in what's otherwise been a successful run in the world of video games. Show me the money. In 2006, Sony was on top of the world. The company was ready to unveil its follow-up home console to the PlayStation 2, and it was confident this new system, the PlayStation 3, would offer a superior alternative to Microsoft's Xbox 360. The PlayStation 3 would not only play the newest titles, but would also offer PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility along with support for Blu-ray movies. The problem? PlayStation 3's price tag. When Sony pulled back the curtain on the PS3, they announced there would be two versions of the console, a stripped-down $499 model and a model with more desirable perks like a larger hard drive and Wi-Fi support for $599. Both were priced higher than even the most expensive Xbox 360 model, which cost $399, stunning both fans and analysts and forcing Sony to drop its price, not once, but twice, in order to make it out of the console wars alive. All the wrong moves. Sony's entry into motion controls came in 2010 with the introduction of PlayStation Move. At first, it was pretty well received, with critics praising its accuracy and responsiveness. Unfortunately, though, its lack of support would spell its untimely demise. Because the Move was an add-on accessory and not a built-in experience like the Wii's motion controls, it didn't work out of the box with every game. Not many games were built specifically for the Move, and many titles with Move support simply tacked on motion controls in an unsatisfying way. Sony copped to not providing enough unique experiences for the peripheral in 2012, and that support continued to fade as the company sped full steam ahead towards the PlayStation 4. A knack for disaster. On paper, Knack should have been something special. The PlayStation 4 exclusive, released at the console's launch in November 2013, was the brainchild of celebrated game designer Mark Cerny, whose previous works included Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, and Ratchet & Clank. And the game's unique premise, the character Knack is a being made of relics, who can shrink or grow depending on the number of relics he's surrounded by, gave it a chance to stand out from the more traditional action and sports launch titles.
But Knack, if you're not the key, then you're far too much trouble to keep around. Take him out!
But Knack never quite lived up to expectations. The game received mediocre review scores, with critics singling out the game's story and unexpected difficulty as weak points. In spite of the game being a flop that didn't exactly leave a lasting impact on the community, Sony still went ahead with a 2017 sequel to the game. And sure, Knack 2 received decent reviews, but it sure as hell didn't make up for its bland predecessor. Out of order. At E3 2013, nearly half a year before the PlayStation 4 launched, Sony unveiled a game that looked like it would set an early precedent for graphics and cinematics. Titled The Order 1886, the game promised to transport players into an alternate history London full of werewolves, steampunk-inspired weapons, and top-notch storytelling. Following that E3 event, The Order 1886 became a hotly anticipated release for many who planned to pick up a PlayStation 4 later in the year. Unfortunately, The Order 1886 disappointed fans before they could even get their hands on it. The game slipped out of its original 2014 release window, instead arriving in early 2015. And when it finally did launch, players were disappointed to find that the game was incredibly short, with its campaign clocking in at around 6 hours. Reviewers also knocked the game's combat for being generic, and while most did admit the game's art was fantastic, the art didn't make the game any less boring. Sky-high expectations. Prior to the PlayStation 4 generation, developer Hello Games was known for the Joe Danger series. These titles featured racing and platforming elements inside side-scrolling levels and weren't exactly the most complex games ever created. So when the VGX Awards rolled around in late 2013 and Hello Games unveiled No Man's Sky, an ambitious exploration game with a procedurally generated universe, gamers were intrigued, if cautious. This was a big project after all. It didn't take long for No Man's Sky to become the very definition definition of hype in the gaming world. To make matters worse, Hello Games' Sean Murray, the lead director on the project, was feeding the frenzy, going as far as to appear on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert to demo the title.
Well, let's talk about the thing that everybody wants you to release, No Man's Sky.
As the buzz grew and Hello Games needed some more experienced help, Sony stepped in to handle distribution. But when the game released in summer 2016, fans and critics alike quickly realized that it was missing many of its advertised features, like giant dinosaurs and dense forests to explore. Furthermore, the procedurally generated worlds shown in the marketing materials turned out to be all pretty much the same. And the last nail in the coffin? After the many faults of No Man's Sky became apparent, Hello Games essentially stopped communicating with customers for months. No Man's Sky wound up building a universe full of broken promises. To be fair, the game did manage to win back some early naysayers when it added in most of the missing key features in the months following its launch, but its incomplete, frustrating release will forever be remembered as the #1 reason to stay off the hype train. And we all fall down. In 2012, the original Gravity Rush released on the PlayStation Vita to generally favorable reviews and surprisingly decent sales. This resulted in a sequel, but instead of returning to the underperforming Vita, players' second outing as the Amnesiac Cat landed on the PlayStation 4. At first, things looked promising. Gravity Rush 2 dropped in January 2017 and had a relatively good first week of sales in Japan, but the game's appeal in the West was limited, and even Japanese interest in the title started to trail off after a few weeks. Sales aside, the game received positive reviews across the board, but it didn't seem to generate the desired amount of buzz. Sony moved to shut down Gravity Rush 2's servers only a year after its release. They eventually compromised, however, keeping them in operation until July instead, but the damage, it appears, has been done. Given the overall underwhelming response to the game, a threequel doesn't look all that likely. Thanks for watching. Click the SVG icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.